daring flight of imagination would have ventured the prediction that within the span of 6 days that stately ship, humbled, shattered, and torn asunder, would lie 2,000 fathoms deep at the bottom of the Atlantic, that the benign face that peered from the bridge would be set in the rigor of death, and that the happy bevy of voyaging brides would be sorrowing widows. Almost in a collision. The big vessel had, however, a touch of evil fortune before she cleared the harbor of Southampton. As she passed down her stream, her immense bulk, she displaced 66,000 tons, drew the waters after her with an irresistible suction that tore the American liner New York from her moorings. 7 steel hawsers were snapped like twine. The New York floated toward the White Star ship and would have rammed the new ship had not the tugs Vulcan and Neptune stopped her and towed her back to the quay. When the mammoth ship touched at Cherbourg and later at Queenstown, she was again the object of a port ovation, the smaller craft doing obeisance while thousands gazed in wonder at her stupendous proportions. After taking aboard some additional passengers at each port, the Titanic headed her towering bow toward the open sea, and the race for a record on her maiden voyage was begun. New burst of speed each day. The Titanic made 484 miles as her first day's run, her powerful new engines turning over at the rate of 70 revolutions. On the second day out, the speed was hit up to 73 revolutions, and the run for the day was bulletined at 519 miles. Still further increasing the speed, the rate of revolution of the engines was raised to 75, and the day's run was 549 miles, the best yet scheduled. But the ship had not yet been speeded to her capacity. She was capable of turning over about 78 revolutions. Had the weather conditions been propitious, it was intended to press the great racer to the full limit of her speed on Monday. But for the Titanic, Monday never came. Fire in the coal bunkers. Unknown to the passengers, the Titanic was on fire from the day she sailed from Southampton. Her officers and crew knew it, for they had fought the fire for days. This story, told for the first time by the survivors of the crew, was only one of the many thrilling tales of the fateful first voyage. The Titanic sailed from Southampton on Wednesday, April 10th at noon, said J. Dilly, a fireman on the Titanic. I was assigned to the Titanic from the Oceanic, where I had served as a fireman. From the day we sailed, the Titanic was on fire, and my sole duty, together with 11 other men, had been to fight that fire. We made no headway against it. Passengers in ignorance. Of course, he went on, the passengers knew nothing of the fire. Do you think we'd have let them know about it? No, sir. The fire started in bunker number 6. There were hundreds of tons of coal stored there. The coal on top of the bunker was wet, as all the coal should have been. But down at the bottom of the bunker, the coal had been permitted to get dry. The dry coal at the bottom of the pile took fire and smoldered for days. The wet coal on top kept the flames from coming through, but down in the bottom of the bunkers, the flames were raging. 2 men from each watch of stokers were told off to fight that fire. The stokers worked 4 hours at a time, so 12 of us were fighting flames from the day we put out of Southampton until we hit the iceberg. No, we didn't get that fire out, and among the stokers there was talk that we'd have to empty the big coal bunkers after we'd put our passengers off in New York, and then call on the fireboats there to help us put out the fire. The stokers were alarmed over it, but the officers told us to keep our mouths shut. They didn't want to alarm the passengers. Usual diversion. Until Sunday, April 14th, then the voyage had apparently been a delightful but uneventful one. The passengers had passed the time in the usual diversions of ocean travelers, amusing themselves in the luxurious saloons, promenading on the boat deck, lolling at their ease in the steamer chairs, and making pools on the daily runs of the steamships. The smoking rooms and card rooms had been as well patronized as usual, and a party of several notorious professional gamblers had begun reaping their usual easy harvest. As early as Sunday afternoon, the officers of the Titanic must have known that they were approaching dangerous ice fields of the kind that are a perennial menace to the safety of steamships following the regular transatlantic lanes off the Great Banks of Newfoundland. An unheeded warning. On Sunday afternoon, the Titanic's wireless operator forwarded to the hydrographic office in Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and elsewhere the following dispatch. April 14th. The German steamship America, Hamburg American Line, reports by radio telegraph passing two large icebergs in latitude 41.27, longitude 50.08. Titanic, BRSS. Despite this warning, the Titanic forged ahead Sunday night at her usual speed from 21 to 25 knots. End of chapters 2 and 3 of The Sinking of the Titanic and Great Sea Disasters.